Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is Jeffrey. I don't know how to say your last name. How do I pronounce your last name?
Deskovic.
Deskovic.
Yes.
Oh, wow. What language is that?
It's Czechoslovakian.
Oh, that's so cool. Very cool. Welcome, Jeffrey, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here and to hear your journey.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So, Jeffrey, where about are you tuning in from?
My home, which is in the Bronx in New York,
Oh,
in the
nice.
United States.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Yeah. So, Jeffrey, why don't you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm an attorney and founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice. It's a nonprofit organization that I started, which has as its mission freeing people who are in prison for crimes that they're innocent of and pursuing policy changes aimed at preventing that from happening in the first place. A
Mhm.
master's degree in criminal justice. My thesis is written on wrongful conviction, causes, and reform. And I started the organization because I survived 16 years of wrongful imprisonment myself. I was arrested when I was 16 for a murder and rape, which I didn't commit. Lost the trial shortly after turning 17. I was incarcerated wrongfully from age 17 to 32 before being exonerated through DNA evidence. So my life mission is to now free people in the same position I was once in while working to prevent what happened to me from happening to others through policy changes.
Oh, wow. I am so excited to hear more of your story. That is a survival story, and you're singing your survival song and you're spreading hope and helping others. Um, Take us back as far as you wish to of what happened.
Sure, the year is 1990. It was in Peekskill, which was a suburb in Westchester County, New York.
Mhm.
It was popular. It was a small city, population approximately 25,000 people. I would say it was ethnically diverse, that it was middle class.
Mm.
And and the student who was a classmate of mine in two of my classes, a freshman, one as a sophomore. She went missing, and ultimately her body was found a couple of days later. She had been murdered and raped. Peekskill was not used to having. There weren't a lot of murders there in New York, so it created an atmosphere of fear, rumor, paranoia. Parents were concerned with their own safety and the safety of their children. In high school, I was quiet. I was to myself. I didn't participate in a lot of organized sports. So I seemed strange to they made me seem strange to the kids in the high school. So in the course of the police investigation, they interviewed a lot of students from the school, and some of them told the police that they might want to speak with me. This is what the police said initially attracted them to me, put me on their radar.
Mhm.
And an additional factor is I was a sensitive teenager. This was my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction to that. And the cops thought that that was suspicious. So that was a reinforcing factor. And then they got psychological profile from the NYPD, which claimed to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator. And I had the misfortune of matching that. So it was a reinforcing factor. So for about 6 weeks, the police played this cat and mouse game with me, in which they'd start off talking to me like I'm a suspect. And then when they'd push too hard and I'd want to get away from them, I'd become frightened. They would switch it up. And Jeff is this junior detective helper theme was developed. They would say things like, the kids won't talk around us, they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They would ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinion was correct. I came from a single parent household, so and that intersected with the good cop, bad cop technique, where one officer was pretending to be my friend. So I began to look at him as a father figure.
Mhm.
And eventually they got me to agree to take a lie detector test. So instead of going to the school one day, I went to the police station for the test. And because it was a school day, my mother and grandmother thought I was in school, so they didn't call around looking for me.
Mhm.
And they drove me 40 minutes away by car. They took me from Peekskill, which is in Westchester. They took me to the town of Brewster, which was in Putnam County, which meant that, being 40 minutes away by car, I wasn't able to leave on my own anymore. I was dependent upon the police.
Mhm.
The polygraphist was the Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, but He never identified himself as law enforcement. He was dressed like a civilian. He never read me my rights. I didn't understand the brochure which explained how the polygraph worked, but I figured, well, I'm there to help the police. So, what does it matter? Let's just get on with it.
Mhm.
Then he put me in a small room. And, by the way, I didn't have anything to eat the whole time I'm there. There's no lawyer. And then he gave me countless cups of coffee to get me nervous. And then he wired me up to the machine. And then he launched into his third-degree tactics. He invaded my personal space, raising his voice at me, asking me the same questions over and over again. And he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. And at the end, he said, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." That really shot my fear to the roof. And then the officer had been pretending to be my friend. He came in the room and told me, "Look, they're going to harm you. I'm holding them off. I can't do this any longer. You have to help yourself. Look, just tell them what they want to hear. You go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested." So being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about the long term. I was just concerned with my safety in the moment. I was in fear of my life because the fact that I didn't know where I was and no one else did was large in my mind. Then he had conveyed a threat. He had thrown me this false life preserver. So I took the out which he offered. I made up a story based on the information that they gave me that day in the 6 weeks run up to it. By the time it was said and done, I had collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably, and I was arrested for murder and rape.
Wow. Whew. I'm just soaking in everything you're sharing because you're not alone in what you went through. That sounds so traumatic. And just the positions they put you in and how they interrogate you. And your parents weren't there and you were a minor.
Right.
Wow. Um, so what happened after, let's say your parents were looking for you after that? What was the process and what happened?
Well, the police called my mother and told them I had been arrested. So she came to the police station and, ultimately I was assigned a public defender and I, went to trial. The DNA didn't match me before the trial.
Mm-hmm.
But then the prosecutor got the medical examiner to commit fraud. He said, "Look, I forgot to document medical findings that he claimed showed the victim had been promiscuous," which was a lie. But he said that so that the prosecutor could argue that that was how the DNA didn't match me, and yet I was convicted. Then he mentioned somebody by name that he claimed slept with the victim, but he never set the proper evidentiary foundation. So he never called him as a witness. He never got a DNA sample. He just made the unsupported argument to the jury.
Mm-hmm.
Public defender I had essentially didn't defend me. He never called my alibi as a witness, never explained to the jury what the DNA not matching me meant. He never used that to challenge the confession. He never cross-examined the medical examiner. He wouldn't allow me to testify. Sometimes he told the jury the confession never happened. Other times he argued that it happened, but it was coerced. And at other times he argued it was a false confession. So throwing things against the wall, I mean, you're not going to look believable
Mm-hmm.
in front of the jury. Lastly, he should have never represented me because this other youth that the prosecutor was falsely saying had slept with the victim was represented by another person in that same public defender office. So that prevented us from asking him to give a sample. It prevented us from calling him as a witness. So the end result of it all was that I was found guilty and given a 15 to life sentence, and I was then sent to a maximum security prison for with a 15 to life sentence. You know, where I wound up ultimately losing 7 appeals,
Mm-hmm.
getting turned down for parole because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility. Ultimately being exonerated through further DNA testing through the DNA data bank, which reaffirmed my innocence and identified the actual perpetrator because his DNA was in the data bank because he killed a second victim 3.5 years later after killing the victim in my case.
Oh,
She was
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was a school teacher who had 2 children.
Oh, wow. So the whole time they interrogated you were in prison. The person who actually committed the crime was in the community.
Correct. Yes, the whole,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. While I was in prison, he was in the community. Yes.
Wow. Um, it just shows how much that law enforcement and all those people who make decisions, there's still a gap and there's still not enough I would say either resources or things that are not in place. Something is missing. And it's sad because you're not the only person this happened to. And I'm honored to be talking to you to learn from you because I've never done an interview like this. So bear with me.
Sure. Take your
I
time.
don't
No
know
worries.
what question to ask, when to ask question, people. So hang on. Oh my goodness. Um, so here you are 16.
Mhm.
So what was your teenage years like in prison?
Yeah. So by the time, look, I was 16 when I was arrested. I turned
Okay.
17 before the trial started, and I lost. I was in prison from 17 to 32. But
Okay.
yeah, but so I mean, it was I had to keep fighting off feelings of, hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up, suicidal ideation. It was difficult to get used to being in a cell. Certainly, it was it was, dangerous. It was a, maximum security prison, and then I'm
Mhm,
there wrongfully in prison for a sex offense, which there's a vigilante mentality towards people who've been convicted of sex offenses. So there was a lot of violence around me. There was a lot of verbal abuse from the guards towards the prisoners in general. The food was bad. Sometimes it would be burned. Other times it would not be fully cooked.
mm,
So it was, yeah, it was, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, I tried to utilize the time for my advantage. Like I didn't want to compound the loss, make it a total loss. So I took the educational programs that they had. So I got GED, I completed associates, I completed another year towards the bachelor's at the time that funding was cut
mhm,
of college education for prisoners. I learned to I learned to type. I took computer repair. I did general business, which pertains to different applications of the computer in a workforce, a workplace setting.
mhm,
To finish the plumbing program, I did food service. I took a class on how adults learned. I worked as a teacher's aide several times for like a year and a half, helping some of the other prisoners prepare for get ready for GED class and then for the GED test.
mhm,
And then from 1998 to 2006. I read 3 or 4 nonfiction books a week. Just I figured I could use my time positive, learn something at the same time. I had some particular concentrations of books. I mean, I really enjoyed reading self-help books. I liked reading books about relationships. I figured, well, if and when I get out of here, not gonna, when I do hopefully have a relationship in the
yeah,
future, I'm not gonna be drawing on experience from when when I was younger. So I'm gonna have to try to apply whatever I can learn from a book to try to make it
yeah,
work.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
was my theory on that. And, I read books on politics, presidential history. I mean, I felt like if you understand the past more, you can understand the present and,
mhm,
have an eye towards the future.
yeah,
In
mhm,
terms of how I survived the experience, I mean, I think that, belief in God was one thing. Another thing was, I didn't think about, well, it's a 15 a life sentence. I figured I just have to make it for a year or two for the next appeal, which I was sure I was going to win because I believed in the court system and my innocence.
mhm,
I went to the law library and learned the law because I didn't trust lawyers to defend me anymore. I wanted to be able to be a little bit more knowledgeable, to be in position to give a few suggestions and to be able to evaluate the work that was being done on my behalf. And I wasn't going to do that if I didn't know anything at all about the law. So hence going to the law library.
mhm,
And I would sometimes cut out pictures of nature scenes and I would put them on the wall and, kind of travel there mentally. And,
mhm,
I engaged in kind of an elaborate delusion. When I would play basketball or ping pong or chess, I would pretend I was doing so professionally and so were the other people. But it wasn't really like kids fooling around on a playground. This was more
yeah,
like my mind was a defense mechanism. My mind needed to get out of the prison, and that was the box that it
mhm,
created
mhm.
metaphorically.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Um, what did your parent do? Did they try to fight on your behalf with the court and the justice system to get you out once they knew where you were and what you were convicted of?
Well, my father was never involved in my life, but that was before I was born. He wanted to get out of financial responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
so it was just my mother. My mother came to see me a lot. My grandmother used to come with her, but then she passed away while I was inside.
Mm,
I had several sets of aunts and uncles that would come,
yeah.
they would visit, then disappear, and then come and disappear. So, for most of, my brother came 3 times in 16 years, not at all in the last decade. So, I mean, for most intents and purposes, I basically did the time, most of the time by myself. Because the last 5 or 6 years, I was lucky if I saw my mother once every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, my mother made rounds a few times and, asked the extended family, could everybody put in a manageable amount of money so that, we could hire a lawyer, but, nobody was, she did that a couple times, but nobody was willing to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she stood by my side on a morale level. At just the last 5 or 6 years, I would see her once every 6 months, but,
Mm-hmm.
that was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Wow. It sounded like you taught yourself so much. You
Mhm.
read so much books.
I
Do you
did.
still enjoy
Yeah.
reading right now?
I do enjoy reading. I don't get a chance to do too much of it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to unleash my potential when I was
Yeah.
released, and I was given scholarship to finish the bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished the bachelor's degree, and I began working as an individual advocate. I was doing presentations across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm international. I became a weekly columnist, so I was writing once a week, and I was regularly meeting with elected officials, and I was doing media interviews. So I
Mm-hmm.
did that for 5 years, even while I was going through the difficulties associated with reintegration.
Mm-hmm.
Technology was different. GPS, cell phones, internet had been created. Culture was different. Cities and towns were different. The psychological after effects, the stigma of having been in prison, though wrongfully, but still having been there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Working, awkwardness when I would meet with my extended family.
Mm-hmm.
I was always passed over for gainful employment. I mean, everybody seemed to want somebody that could hit the ground running, that had job
Mm-hmm.
experience, then patience for on-the-job training, and then just having to readjust to things that I never had a chance to do because, as you said, I was in prison in my teenage years. So I got my license for the first time, and I had never went shopping before. I had never lived alone. I never wrote a check. I never balanced the budget. But during all those, and it was just lonely. But while all those difficulties were going on, I was still doing advocacy work, and my survival was somewhat connected to that. I mean, speaking and writing were
Mm-hmm.
really the only two ways that I was able to have any money coming in. A couple of weeks away from a homeless shelter, but the college that gave me the scholarship let me stay there on the campus.
Mm-hmm.
And after about, I didn't, well, let me say this, I didn't get into law school, so I decided to get a master's degree. I figured the extra credential would make me a better advocate, so I would get closer to what my potential was. And then I finally got compensated, so I used some of the money to start the Deskovic Foundation, the purpose which you talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, we've gotten 14 people home. We helped pass 3 laws and another 6 as members of the coalition group, if it happened to you.
Yeah.
And I got tired of sitting in the front row, so I wanted to try to level up again and get closer to my potential. So I went to law school and became a lawyer.
Wow. I love that. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for sharing. So when you got out,
Mhm.
you mentioned that it was lonely, it was hard. I can only imagine how hard that was. Um, and it hard to find job? I find that as you expressed, there's so much judgments.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And what was the process before you got out? You must have had to go back to court and have I don't know court stuff, but
Yeah, sure.
someone defended you and spoke on your behalf. You must have spoken also.
Okay.
Yeah, how did that happen? Sorry, all the sirens.
No, it's okay. No worries. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, all right. So when my appeals were over, I lost 7 appeals. So that took about 11 years. So after that, after your appeals are what they call exhausted, meaning they're finished.
Mm,
The only way back in a court is if you can find some previously unknown evidence of innocence that probably would have led to a different outcome.
mhm,
So I didn't have any money to hire an attorney or an investigator. So I started a letter writing campaign, writing law firms and nonprofits and faith-based organizations. I wrote anybody at all that could do anything, either whether they were in the legal field or not.
mhm, mhm,
And ultimately, one of those letters that I wrote to a book author and carried the publishing company, they took the letter and sent it to an investigator, and the investigator wrote me, and she suggested I write the Innocence Project, a nonprofit organization, and she lobbied them to take my case, and she got some other people to lobby them also. And then I got lucky that one of the NTEC workers represented when the Innocence Project didn't want to take my case. He represented it a couple of additional times, so them getting them to agree to take it the third time.
mhm,
So that was how I ended up with the legal representation. So that was the first key.
mhm.
Second key is the Westchester District Attorney at the time, Janine Pirro, who had fought all the appeals and blocked me from getting further testing. She had left office, and her successor was willing to let me have the testing. So that was the second key. And the third key is we got lucky that the perpetrator's DNA was in the data bank. So from there, once it matched him, both sides agreed to over the conviction should be overturned. So we went back to court, and they both sides said the same thing, and the judge overturned the conviction, and I was released.
Mhm.
And I went back to court about 6 weeks later, and all the charges were dismissed against me on actual innocence grounds, and the actual perpetrator was subsequently arrested and convicted.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. Um, can you tell us more about your foundation? And I was gonna ask why is it there, but I have a pretty good idea. And who do you help, and how do you help them?
Sure. So the foundation's mission is to free people that are wrongfully imprisoned, just like I was, and to work on policy changes, helping to pass and change laws that are aimed at preventing what happened to me from happening to others.
Mhm,
The deficiencies in the justice system, the cracks in the system whereby innocent people can be arrested and wrongfully convicted, those causes are known,
mhm,
just like the changes, the modifications we need in the system are known. And so the policy part of it is trying to get the legislatures to pass different laws and modify laws to fix those cracks in the system.
mhm,
So far, we have freed 14 people, like I mentioned, and we've helped pass the 3 laws and the other 6. Right now, we're working on 13 cases. I'm co-counsel in 9 of them,
mhm.
and we're working on policy changes in New York, Pennsylvania, and California.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's so inspiring. Wow. Can you share with us some success stories, obviously without disclosing too much?
Yeah, sure. So last December, I helped overturn my first case as a lawyer. I was co-counsel. We
Mhm,
overturned Andre Brown's conviction. He was released. That was 2 weeks before Christmas. So it was in December. Andre had been in for 24 years, so he had got to spend time with his son, his daughter, and his wife as a free man. That was a success.
mhm,
Another success was some of the laws we passed. I mean, the probably the most significant one we helped to pass, and it's called Commission on Prosecutor Conduct. So it's an independent oversight board that can investigate allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. So we passed that. That was the first one in the U.S. So we passed that.
mhm,
We um, passed discovery reform, which means information that's shared between the prosecution and the defense. I mean, before things would just be shared just before a hearing, just before a trial. Now it's automatic uh, within 30 days.
mhm,
And help pass a law that DNA database expansion, better identification procedures, videotaping interrogations. So
Yeah.
those things are all highlights. Another highlight, we helped to exonerate. We exonerated Andrew Krivak, so the same polygraphist that forced the false confession out of me did the same thing to Andy. So
Oh.
that case was particularly meaningful.
Mm. Wow. That's so rewarding, the work that you do. And it's even better that you have the experience to help the people you're helping. And I bet they trust you and rely on you and
Yes,
believe in you to help them succeed.
they did.
Have you talked to you're welcome. Have you talked to any government officials?
Oh, sure. On a regular, yeah, on a regular basis, I meet with people in the Senate and the Assembly, in New York, Pennsylvania. Sometimes the people
Mhm.
in California, sometimes elected officials in California.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
regularly meet rounds, and then just as an individual advocate, not my with my nonprofit, but just as an individual advocate, when people are running for office, if they're running on a justice reform plank or a plank that involves doing something in the area of wrongful conviction, they often seek me out, and they ask me to endorse them and endorse their plank. So it's kind
Mhm.
of gratifying to do
Mhm.
that. Also,
Mhm.
I do want to share. It's very the work is healing. It's healing, it's cathartic, it's meaningful. It makes the suffering count for something. So,
Yeah.
I do make sense of everything that happened to me in a kaleidoscopic type of way. So I
Mhm.
think I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing, and that's how I make sense of what happened to me.
Yeah.
And with that, I have some inner peace.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not an angry person. I want to enjoy my life as much as I can, and I don't think if I can do that if I'm angry or bitter. And I think
Mhm.
if I was to be angry or bitter, I've lost so much already as is. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life? And
Mhm.
it's not like I'd be impacting anybody anyway. Only, I would be the only loser in that scenario. So I take the vehicle that allows me to do this. I take the energy that I feel and channel it into the advocacy work that I do.
I love that. I think once we face stuff like you faced and I've faced, many other people have faced, it's a wake up call, to enjoy life, to make the best of every day because it's not guaranteed at all, at all. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned advocacy. How
Mhm.
can victims advocate for themselves?
Well, I think first of all, I mean, seeking help. First of all, I mean, you have to have like
Mhm.
like a clear narrative.
Mhm.
It could be like a Word document or letter. Doesn't have to be, but could be. But nothing long. It needs to be like
Mhm.
short to the point. Maybe two paragraphs max, but even better if you can do it in one paragraph or paragraph and a half, and
Mhm.
just get right to the point. You don't want to leave anything important out, but you can't drown with somebody with details. So I
Mhm.
think having an attention grabbing type of letter and seeking some help, I would think that's certainly part of it. I mean, learning more about the process. What's the rules? What is the process involved? Those things are important. Never giving up. Try routes people have taken before. What's worked before. Try some of that. Don't be afraid to break new ground. Try other ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know Kim Kardashian has done quite a bit of work within the line of work that you're doing. I think she's a lawyer now. I don't know too much about her in
I
that
think.
sense.
Well, she's studying to do it. That's what the news report that I read. But yeah,
Yeah. Have you met or talked to her?
no, I haven't. I would like to. But that would be me and 10,000 other people, many though not all of whom are other advocates and have organizations, but everybody would like to be in touch. I mean, certainly the public platform that she has, is very high visibility and ability to help organizations quite a bit just in terms of even just her plank any number of ways. So all of us would like to get to her and be able to talk to her and share her what our missions are
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what our accomplishments have been and what we could do if we were had got additional resources. But I haven't figured out how to do that yet. It's not like I can
Yeah.
just email or pick up the phone. But listen, if you're out there and you're listening and you have a route to her, I mean,
Mhm.
you mentioned me and connect. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't.
I'm sure. Neither
Yeah.
you nor I nor most people, but who knows? But
Yeah.
this kind of brings me to another point I really would
Yeah.
like to make.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I've thought about my life quite a bit, and in terms of you know being arrested, and the time period between then and the trial, losing the trial, the time in prison, my struggles
Mhm.
afterwards, and the 5 years of difficulty before I was compensated, and then even my life since then. And I have this universal formula that, can I've seen people apply in certainly in more walks of life other than just wrongful conviction.
Mhm.
So that is, have a you have a goal,
Mhm.
have a realistic plan. So meaning you should be able to look at you formulate a plan, and then you should be able to look at it three or four different ways and say to yourself, well, yeah, I could see how this might work.
Yeah.
Uh, Thirdly, be flexible. Remember, the goal is the goal. The plan's not the goal.
Mhm.
And another thing is, you got to work really hard. I'm not a pie in the sky type person. I don't think everything's going to be okay just because. I think that you have to work really, really hard in order to put yourself into a position for a door to open, the right door at the right time by the right person, or a miracle to occur, however you want to phrase it. It's not going to just come out of nowhere. You have to work really, really hard, and then something can happen.
Mhm.
No, no, no excuses. There might indeed be reason or plenty of reasons why something is more difficult for you to accomplish.
Mhm.
But no, but it's not that you can't accomplish it. So
Yeah.
no excuses. And then lastly, never give up. So when you come to the point where you can't go on anymore, and it has happened to me a few times, I just think to myself, well, maybe this is the key moment right now. Maybe
Mm.
maybe I was on the verge of a breakthrough, but because I quit, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to keep going anyway, even though I can't. I'm going to keep going and just to
Mhm.
see what happens on the other side. And when you cross the bridge, you got to reach back and help people in that same position.
Mhm.
So I've seen people that were incarcerated that, when they're released, I've seen people that were incarcerated that work with at-risk youth. I've seen people that at one time were homeless, and now they're working with the homeless population.
Mm.
I've seen women who were survivors of domestic abuse, and now they're helping other women restart their lives, get away from domestic abusers. I've seen
Mhm.
family members of homicide victims that now do advocacy work. I even saw somebody once who had been sexually trafficked, and now they have a nonprofit that, works on helping to, it supports those who are freeing people who are, who are in captivity that way. So I know that it can apply in a wide range of circumstances.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love your mindset, and it's a good one to have, given what you've been through, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so many people walk around asleep and they don't wake up or get up until they get a wake up call. Could be a near death experience or a death or an illness.
Right.
Mine is illness and abuse and so many other things. Before I'm like, okay, I'm awake now. Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't know how to word this because I'm in Canada. I'm not in the States, so I don't understand most of the legislations or government stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I know for me and my country, there is no system. It's
Hmm.
the police, the government, everything is corrupted. And I know here, it's a muscle I continue to exercise to trust. law enforcement.
Sure,
I,
sure,
s-
sure.
I still don't, but I choose to because I can, because I don't want to carry my past and trauma into something I could birth and help people with. What would you say to people who have trauma like what I explained?
Yeah, sure. I would say know how the world works, understand the system is what it is, but at the same time, try not to. Um, you don't want to be overly broad with the brush either.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I would just say be cautious, but try not to be overbroad. You have it's better that you could try to fix things from within the system. I think it's a little bit easier than trying to fix
Hmm.
things from without.
Hmm. Hmm. And to experience for oneself, meaning sometimes we're living from the truth of our either ancestors or parents, great grandparents. Maybe something happened to them, and then based on that, it becomes our truth.
Right. Sure. I mean, look, I think that's true. That's certainly true in the US when you think about, the fight for civil rights and how people were
Mhm.
treated before that and,
Mhm.
age of racism, age of slavery. Many peoples have gone through that. But
Mhm.
so I think that look, I think that fighting for change in positive, lawful manners, there's a lot of good that has come out of that. So I would
Mhm.
challenge people to, just try to fight for change through whatever on whatever level you're able to, through whichever means, you're able to do that. And I certainly think that, getting education, getting credentials is to be more effective in whatever issue it is that you're passionate about. I think that's part of that. Education is a tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's also another massive topic, which I think is happening all over the world. And look at us. We've been fighting for so much for so long. Not much has changed, but a lot of change can be made by those who can make them. I think all of us are capable of making change.
Yeah, I do too. Yes, I do. I do too. And I feel like it's more effective working together, working in coalition and combining, talents and dividing tasks up and, you
Hmm.
know, thinking about solutions and tactics. That's much more effective than trying a go it alone type of approach.
Yeah, yeah. And I think division is dangerous. It can be.
Yeah. Yes, I
Yeah.
think so.
And when we focus only on our pain, ourselves, our troubles, we exclude everybody. That's what we do to people. We push them away. But when we can sit in their pain and listen, then change can really begin to happen.
I agree with that. And I want to also share that I think, having perspective is good. I mean, I've had a lot of people say to me when they learn the story, they said, wow, I thought I had issues. I was thinking about this item in my life or that item in my life or in my business, my work life, but
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like much compared to what you've been through. So I'm kind of looking at that now with
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
perspective, and it feels less and it feels more manageable. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be trying this and that to address it and
Yeah. Yeah.
more empowered. So that's another reason why I like to share the story, why I'm on
Mhm.
your podcast. I'd
Yeah. Yeah.
like to help share perspectives and, to inspire and to raise awareness about a cause and, to have my story heard and to
Yeah.
uplift the work of the organization. At the same time, look, I'm experiencing some level of, healing and catharsis and
Hmm.
reaffirmation, and those things are important.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Isn't it interesting that we think we have it so bad? We close our ears. We don't want to hear other people's stories. But when we surrender to our ego and listen, they're like, oh my gosh, I've been living in a bubble. I don't have it that bad. Yeah. Yeah. And in my case, my story, people are like, how are you still smiling? Because I choose to, it's a choice. And yeah, how would you define life?
So I would define life. I mean, it has a starting point. It has an end. I would discuss it as a as a journey, but having a quality life has to consist to me has to consist of a lot more than just the physical act of of breathing. I mean, I think it's important, I think, to have balance, to have like a quality of life. I mean, what is a quality of life? I mean, I think that varies from person to person, but in the broad brushes, I think it's important to
Mhm,
have people that mean something to you, that who you mean something to as well.
mhm,
Some a couple of things that you're passionate about, having a balance. You do some things
mhm,
that are fun, and
mhm,
you try to be, I think, being well-rounded, giving some thought.
mhm,
I don't think it's good to go through life in such a fast manner where you're not really, thinking about,
mhm,
where you fit in a broader, where do you fit in a broader context, or reflect on your own life or the life of other people around you. I don't think that that's really, I don't think that that's life either. I
mhm.
don't think that people that are just brain dead, literally, in a hospital, they're technically living, but that's not really life. That's not really life to me. So
Yeah.
there's a series of tests and challenges,
Mhm.
and and at some point you complete your journey, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
That's how I think about that's how I think about life.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have a new meaning of life now that you've been through what you've been through?
Absolutely. Sure. I do have a new meaning of life. I mean, I look at myself as like a civil rights activist, a fighter for civil rights, and
Mhm,
stand on the shoulders of giants. So I mean, doing advocacy work on the law, working on people's cases. I mean, to me, that's kind of analogous in a way when people use other tactics in the past. I mean, whether marches, demonstrations, boycotts, bringing lawsuits, or physically helping people escape. You go back to like a Harriet Tubman type person. I mean, I feel like it's all different facets of doing civil rights work. So I feel like a
mhm,
camaraderie, a kinship with, people from, many decades ago, and
mhm,
try to learn. There's similarities too. Like I went to a library once, and I went to a play. It was called The Meeting, which was it was a reenactment. It had some live actors that were reenacting a hypothetical meeting between Dr. King and Malcolm X, and they had other civil rights people there in the other part of the library, just like life-size posters. It was talking about what their timeline of life was and some of the notable accomplishments that they had. And I liked reading some of the tactics were some of the things that that I do. That some of them were they were writing, or they were giving they wrote, or they gave speeches, or they used to meet with elected officials, and they used to collaborate with other advocates, and those are and what their formal educational accomplishments were.
mhm.
So those things are are similar to what I did, and so I take some heart in that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as you were speaking, different heroes come to mind. And I believe you're a hero as well, to your community, to people that have lost hope, people that have been at the bottom. And society does a pretty good job at shunning people because of either things that were not in their control. I was thinking of Martin Luther King. That guy still is a giant because people are still talking about him. And
Absolutely.
I believe, Jeffrey, with my whole heart, that is the legacy you're leaving behind. It's not gonna stop after you're gone.
Right. Well, that's why even why I named organization after me, the idea was that that it would that it would outlive me, and that, it would still be like a beacon of light, a symbol of hope,
Hmm.
and that it would still be functioning. It would still be, helping people try to regain their liberty and, have their civil rights.
Yeah, yeah. So do you only work with people in the States or other places around the world? Because I know
So
law is different everywhere.
law is different everywhere. So in terms of cases, we're just doing New York policy stuff. We're doing in New York, Pennsylvania, California. But I have worked with advocates that are in other countries. Like I did like a week-long
Mm-hmm.
tour, like in our country of Armenia and our Argentina, where I worked with advocates that were there. We did a bunch of presentations. We met with elected officials. We did some media as well, and just brainstorm about,
Hmm.
how to set up organization or tips on continuing or organization. So I do internet. I was in Taiwan, not too long ago, with the Taiwan Innocence Project. So I do some international work, but it's more like working with advocates that are there in terms of bringing awareness to issues through media, speaking engagements, meeting with elected officials, and then talking with them about, processes that my organization carries out that they can replicate there. It's not that we're taking cases in the other countries, because we don't have that capacity yet. But it is my dream, though,
Hmm.
to one day have a chapter of the organization in each state and ultimately each country, because I really see this as a worldwide issue. In countries where we uh, don't hear about wrongful conviction, it's because nobody's being exonerated, nobody's working on the cases.
Yeah, yeah.
Canada, the Innocence Organization, Innocence Canada, which is Canada, and they're
Mhm.
the example of an organization in another country doing this work. And there are organizations that are sprouting up throughout the world in different countries.
Yeah. Do you also teach people?
Yes.
Okay, okay, good. Because here's the word I'm looking for, law illiteracy.
Yeah. 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 Legal
Right?
literacy. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sort of one of those. I
Okay.
speak English. I know not to break the law. There are so many people, I'm sure in the States and here and other places, they know, this is a law. No, don't break it, but they don't know much. I know
Yes.
here there's so many different layers of government. By the second one, I'm lost.
I
The
understand.
same
Yeah.
with law too.
Yeah, so I do teach. I mean, I've been an adjunct professor twice at a college where I twice co-taught a wrongful conviction college course, and
Mhm,
there's other settings or formats. So they have in the U.S. they have what's called a CLE, continued legal education. So all lawyers have to complete a certain amount of credits every couple of years in order to keep their law license current. And I've served as a continued legal instructor on a number of occasions, and
mhm,
sometimes I've been brought in by district attorney offices or groups of prosecutors, groups of judges, sometimes in front of groups of defense lawyers. So, I mean, those are all educational endeavors, and speaking, doing the
yeah.
presentations across the country, and it's not all my story. Sometimes that's what people want, but sometimes they want me to the main focal point to be one topic or another. They might want me to focus in on false confessions, or they might want me to talk about misidentification, or they might want me to focus in on a you know, public defender system, or they might want me to focus on you know what what um, what ways did the system fail in terms of your case. If we looked at your case as a case study, what are all the different points along the way where something went wrong? So could be those topics, could be capital punishment. So I do talk about I do a wide range of teaching that way as well. And sometimes I get invited to speak in high schools, and we do have interns as well. And look,
Mm.
doing podcast interviews in a way is in a way can be teaching as well. There's education
Yeah,
content.
you're teaching me. It's like some of the stuff you shared, I've maybe seen a movie, heard in movies. I have no idea. But yeah, you're proof that life is worth living and fighting for. Yeah, yeah. So let's say people watching this, it could be people like me or the other podcasters or organizations. If they want to talk to you, are you open to them reaching out to you?
100%, of course, definitely. In terms of how they can do that, there is my website, deskovic.org, deskovic.org. There is a web form there that people can email me through.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, Deskovic Foundation. I'm on Facebook, Jeffrey Deskovic. I have my personal page, which is public. I have public figure page, and the organization has a page that way also. So I can definitely be reached, and would love to hear from people. If you like what you've heard today
Mhm,
from me on the podcast, I do want to mention that we do have there is a documentary short about me. It's on Amazon Prime,
mm,
which is called Conviction. It's 21 minutes, so it's not a long film, but it's definitely about my life uh,
mm,
post post exoneration and my advocacy work.
mm,
I just want to mention there is a game I call own. It's called Recharge Beyond the Bars Reentry game, which facilitates formerly incarcerated people with reconnecting with their friends and family
mm,
through icebreaker questions. So all those links will be shared.
mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. I have one last question for you, which might take the rest of your time.
Sure. Okay.
If you were to become president of the United States tomorrow,
Yes. Sure.
what would you change and why, and how would you do it?
Okay.
Geez, I feel smart
So
just
that's great.
asking that.
That was a really great question, by the way.
Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of people in federal prison that they're over sentenced just for people like there are a lot of people in prison doing 20 years and more just marijuana possession. So
What?
so I think people that are there in prison, doing ridiculous amount of time for marijuana possession and people that are over a sentence. I mean, I would commute their sentence. The president can do that as part of his executive ability. I would bring attention. I would use the platform I have to discuss wrongful conviction. I mean, you obviously get a lot of media attention.
Mhm,
The same deficiencies that lead to wrongful convictions in the state cases uh, exist in the federal cases. So, so coerced false confessions and misidentification and lying informants and prosecutorial misconduct and bad lawyering.
mm,
So I would meet with leadership of both parties and address all of those issues and say, look, here's the model legislation from the states, and we need to, we need to get bill sponsors and get these things to me, on my desk so that I can sign them into law. That would those things would be that would be something big that I would do. I mean, we still don't really have like an adequate solution for homelessness. I'd like to see that. I mean, I think that I think we need to really overhaul our immigration system. I mean, I don't agree with people coming in the country sneaking in illegally, but I do recognize that the legal process of doing that is antiquated, is very difficult, and that's what's motivating people to come in illegally. So I would try to get people to get, look, you want me to close, you want this thing closed up, and you want a fairer, easier, more accessible process. So what can we put together that's going to give both of you what you want, but it has to be like in one bill, and it's going to address both of those issues
mhm,
at the same time. So
mhm.
those would be some of the immediate things that
Yeah.
came to mind.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Very good answers. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so leave us with some words of wisdom and encouragement, and we'll wrap up the episode.
Sure. So in terms of some words of wisdom, so appreciate the small things. So since I've regained my freedom and I've been home, I enjoy simple things. I enjoy just feeling the sun on my face. I appreciate air.
Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. No,
Yeah,
that is a laugh of recognition. Okay, I know exactly what that is.
yeah.
Okay, so and being able to sit, I being able to sit outside, freedom of travel.
Mm-hmm,
I like the options and possibilities
mm-hmm.
that freedom brings, and I think that many of us, take freedom for granted.
Yeah.
Try to get the most out of each day.
Mm-hmm,
And look, I think that you can, no matter, look, when your health is gone, when you're, bedridden, when you're, you have mental health issues like, Alzheimer's or something that's beyond, yeah, yeah, then it's all too late. Okay. It's too late at that point.
yeah.
But prior to that, anything short of that, okay, anything short of that, it's never too late. Whatever it is that you want to do or you want to accomplish, I don't think that. I think too many of us just write things off and it's the time for that is before. I'm too old now. But no, you can start older. I mean, it's if the choice is either late or never. I mean, late seems to me better than never, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that would be my words of encouragement. And if I can come home at 32 after losing 16 years in prison, and I can still go up through all the steps that we've talked about in
Mhm,
order to become a lawyer, be where I am now.
mhm,
I think that other people can do it, can do it as well. When you are in challenging situations, it can either break you, you can lose your mind, or you can let it transform you into something, much greater than what you were before. So it's
mhm, mhm.
us
Yeah,
to
yeah.
choose to let it transform us into something.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for giving people hope and reminding them what hope feels and look like. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to have been on. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.